The summer of 1862 scorched the Dakota Territory with a heat that seemed to rise from the earth itself. The endless prairie grasses had turned from vibrant green to brittle gold under the merciless sun, and the horizon shimmered with heat that distorted the very air. It was a season that would be remembered not just for its unrelenting drought or the tension that simmered between settlers and native tribes, but for the stories of those caught in the crossfire of a land changing too quickly for peace to take root. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. This is the tale of Emma and Sarah Thompson, twin sisters barely 8 years old, who lost everything in a single blood-soaked afternoon, and of Wichang P. Mazawakanji, known to some as Morning Star, a Lakota medicine woman whose act of courage would forever alter the course of 3 lives, bound together by tragedy and something far more profound than chance. Some stories are buried beneath the prairie grass, their whispers carried on the wind across generations. This is one of them. The wagon wheels creaked beneath the weight of the Thompson family's possessions, a rhythmic soundtrack to their westward journey. Thomas Thompson walked alongside the oxen, occasionally clicking his tongue to urge them forward. His wife, Rebecca, sat at the front of the wagon, her honey-blonde hair tucked beneath a bonnet that offered little protection from the relentless sun. In the back, sheltered by canvas that had once been white but was now stained amber by dust, the twins huddled together over a single book. "Papa says we'll reach the homestead by nightfall," Sarah whispered, her finger tracing the illustrations of a children's Bible, one of the few possessions their mother had insisted they bring from their previous life in Pennsylvania. Emma, the quieter of the two, nodded. Though identical in appearance, with the same wheat-colored hair and blue eyes that reflected the vast Dakota sky, the sisters had distinct spirits. Sarah approached the world with bold curiosity, while Emma observed it with thoughtful reserve. "You think there will be other children nearby?" Emma finally asked, her voice barely audible above the wagon's constant complaints. Sarah squeezed her sister's hand. "Papa promised there's a settlement just 3 miles from our claim. There must be children there." What neither girl could know was that the settlement Thomas Thompson had pinned his hopes on was already abandoned, its former inhabitants having fled east after repeated conflicts with the Lakota people whose land they had attempted to claim. The Thompson family was traveling into territory that had become increasingly dangerous as summer progressed and resources grew scarce. The first arrow struck the canvas mere inches from Emma's head, its shaft quivering with the force of impact. Rebecca's scream tore through the afternoon stillness, followed immediately by Thomas's shout, "Get down, girls, get down!" The twins dropped to the wagon floor, instinctively clutching each other as chaos erupted around them. The oxen bellowed in pain and fear as more arrows found their marks. The wagon lurched violently, then tipped onto its side, sending provisions and furniture tumbling. A tin of flour burst open, coating the girls in white powder that mingled, with the tears streaming down their faces. Through a tear in the canvas, Emma glimpsed a flash of movement, riders circling the overturned wagon. But these were not Lakota warriors, as the history books would later claim. The attackers wore the mismatched clothing of desperate men, deserters from the Union Army, criminals fleeing justice, opportunists who had discovered that blaming their atrocities on native tribes provided convenient cover for their brutality. A gunshot cracked the air, followed by their mother's abrupt silence. Thomas Thompson's voice rose in rage and desperation before being cut short by another shot. Then came the methodical sounds of looting, the raiders picking through the family's belongings, taking what little of value they could find. "Don't make a sound," Sarah mouthed to her sister, pulling Emma deeper into a hollow created by their father's overturned workbench and a trunk of clothing. The white flour covering them now seemed a blessing, helping them blend into the shadows and Spilled contents of the wagon, the raiders' voices grew distant as they departed with their meager spoils, leaving destruction in their wake. Still, the twins remained frozen in their hiding place as the afternoon sun began its slow descent. The only sounds were each other's terrified breathing and the occasional groan of the damaged wagon settling into the earth. Hours passed. But relentless heat gave way to the prairie's nighttime chill. Finally, when the first stars appeared in the vast sky above, Sarah tugged at her sister's hand. "We have to look," she whispered. "We have to find Mama and Papa." Emma's eyes, wide with fear, reflected the rising moon. "What if the bad men come back?" "We can't stay here forever," Sarah replied, her 8-year-old voice carrying a resolve beyond her years. Together, they crawled from their hiding place. The scene that greeted them outside the wagon's protective shell would haunt their dreams. For years to come, their parents lay motionless on the ground, their blood soaking into the thirsty prairie soil. The oxen, too, had been slaughtered, ensuring the raiders left no witnesses and no means of escape for any survivors. Sarah sobbed openly, clutching her sister's hand with painful intensity. Emma's grief manifested differently, a silent, still shock that seemed to freeze her from the inside out. "We need to bury them," Emma finally whispered, her first words since the attack. "Like in the Bible." But the ground was hard-packed clay, baked by weeks of drought, and the girls had no tools that had survived the attack. The best they could manage was to cover their parents with the canvas torn from the wagon, weighing it down with stones gathered from the surrounding area. Sarah recited what she could remember of the Lord's Prayer as Emma arranged wildflowers atop the makeshift shrouds. As night fully claimed the prairie, the twins huddled together amid the wreckage of their family's dreams. Two small figures dwarfed by the immensity of the landscape and their loss. The coyotes began their mournful chorus in the distance, a sound that seemed to echo the desolation in the girls' hearts. "We should walk to the settlement tomorrow," Sarah said, her voice hoarse from crying. "Papa said it was just 3 miles west." Emma nodded, too exhausted and traumatized to form words. They curled together beneath a blanket that still smelled of their mother's lavender sachet, a scent that would forever after evoke both comfort and unimaginable grief. Morning brought no relief. The sun rose with indifferent brilliance over the scene of tragedy. The twins awakened to find that scavengers had visited during the night, disturbing the canvas coverings despite the stones. This final indignity broke something in both girls, and they turned away from what remained of their parents, gathering what few supplies they could salvage: a canteen half full of water, a small pouch of dried apple slices their mother had prepared for the journey, the children's Bible with its comforting illustrations, a single change of clothes each, Thomas Thompson's pocket watch, which had somehow been overlooked by the raiders, perhaps kicked beneath the wagon during the attack. With these meager possessions, Emma and Sarah began walking west, toward the settlement their father had promised would be their new community. Their flour-dusted dresses had hardened in the night's dew, making movement stiff and uncomfortable. The sun climbed higher, beating down on their uncovered heads, as their bonnet had been lost in the chaos. "It's so hot," Emma murmured, her lips already cracking from dehydration. Sarah, taking the role of elder, despite being born only 7 minutes before her sister, rationed a small sip of water to each of them. "We need to save it. Papa would want us to be smart." By midday, the heat had become a living thing, pressing down upon them with malevolent weight. The landmark seemed unchanging: endless grass, occasional stands of scrubby trees that offered no real shade, distant buttes that never seemed to grow closer, no matter how long they walked. "I think we're lost," Emma finally admitted, dropping to her knees in the brittle grass. Sarah wanted to deny it, to maintain the facade of confidence she'd been projecting for her sister's sake. But the truth was undeniable. They had no idea where. They were going, and the water was nearly gone. "We'll rest until it gets cooler," she decided, guiding Emma toward a slight depression in the earth that offered the barest minimum of shelter from the sun. "Then we'll keep walking." But as the afternoon stretched on, both girls succumbed to heat and exhaustion. They fell into a fitful sleep, curled together like they had been in their mother's womb, the Bible clutched between them as though it might somehow protect them from the hostility of the world. They did not hear the approach of soft footsteps or feel the shadow that fell across their prone forms as the sun began its westward descent. Wichangpi Mazawahang, Morning Star, had been gathering prairie plants for her medicines when she discovered the twin girls. At 43, she had seen more than her share of tragedy. The smallpox that had swept through her village 15 winters past had taken her husband and 2 children, leaving her alone, but for her responsibility as a healer to her remaining people. The years of grief had carved deep lines around her eyes and mouth, but had not dimmed the sharp intelligence in her gaze. She studied the unconscious children with caution. White settlers usually meant trouble for the Lakota, especially in recent months as more wagons encroached on tribal hunting grounds. Yet these were not adults with rifles and plows coming to steal Lakota land. Just 2 small girls, clearly abandoned or lost, their skin reddened by sun exposure, their breathing shallow with dehydration. Morning Star touched Emma's forehead gently, feeling the dangerous heat radiating from the child's skin. She made her decision quickly, based on the healer's oath she had taken decades ago, to preserve life whenever possible, regardless of the color of one's skin. From her gathering pouch, she withdrew a small clay jar, sealed with beeswax. Breaking the seal, she dipped her finger into a salve made from pounded yucca root and bear fat. She applied this to the girls' cracked lips and sunburned faces, then opened her water skin and carefully let a few drops fall into each parched mouth. Sarah stirred first, her eyes flying open in alarm at the unfamiliar face hovering above her. She scrambled backward, reaching for Emma protectively. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Stay away!" she cried, her voice barely a rasp. Morning Star remained still, her hands visible and open to show she carried no weapons. She spoke in her native Lakota first, then, seeing the incomprehension on Sarah's face, switched to the broken English she had learned from traders. "Children are sick, need water, need shade." Sarah's gaze darted around the prairie, seeking escape, but the reality of their situation gradually penetrated her fear. They were alone, lost, without water or food. Emma still hadn't awakened fully. Her breathing labored. "My sister is very hot," Sarah admitted, her survival instinct warring with her terror of this stranger. Morning Star nodded. "Sun sickness. Come, my camp is near." She pointed to a distant line of trees that marked a creek bed, a landmark the girls had been too inexperienced to recognize or seek out. Water would be there, and shelter. Sarah hesitated, years of warnings about savage Indians echoing in her memory. Yet the woman before her didn't match those frightening stories. Her face was stern but not threatening, her actions gentle as she applied more salve to Emma's sunburned skin. "Can you help her?" Sarah finally asked, desperation overcoming. "Fear, yes, but must come now. Dark soon, not safe." The decision was made when Emma moaned softly, her eyes fluttering without fully opening. Sarah gathered their few possessions while Morning Star lifted Emma with surprising strength for her slight frame. Together, they began the journey toward the creek bed, Sarah stumbling alongside the medicine woman who carried her sister. The Lakota healer's camp was modest, a single tipi set some distance from the main village, as was traditional for those who worked with powerful medicines. A small fire burned in a ring of stones, tended by a young woman who looked up in surprise as Morning Star approached with her burdens. "Zitkala," Morning Star addressed her apprentice in Lakota. "Prepare the cooling herbs. These children have been touched too long by the sun." Zitkala, barely 16, with eyes that held wisdom beyond her years, nodded and disappeared into the teepee without questioning why her mentor had brought white children into their midst. A dangerous action in these increasingly hostile times. Sarah watched with wary exhaustion as Morning Star laid Emma carefully on a buffalo robe in the shade of the teepee. The Lakota woman worked quickly, mixing herbs with water to create a thin paste that she spread on Emma's forehead and chest. She trickled more water between the unconscious girl's lips, murmuring words Sarah couldn't understand but recognized as prayers for healing chants. "Drink," Morning Star instructed, handing Sarah a wooden cup filled with water infused with mint leaves. Slow, small sips. Sarah obeyed, the cool liquid bringing immediate relief to her parched throat. As the water revived her, the full weight of the past day's events crashed down upon her young shoulders. Her parents were dead, their wagon was destroyed. They were alone in a strange land, dependent on the mercy of a woman from a people they had been taught to fear. The tears came without warning, silent at first, then building into gut-wrenching sobs that shook her small frame. Sarah clutched the Bible to her chest as she cried, the last tangible connection to her former life. Morning Star watched the child's breakdown with compassion, but without interference, recognizing the necessity of grief's expression. Only when Sarah's sobs had quieted to occasional hiccups did the healer approach again, this time offering a thin broth made from prairie hen and wild onions. "Eat," she said simply, "then sleep. Tomorrow, talk." Sarah accepted the small wooden bowl, the savory aroma reminding her how long it had been since they'd eaten properly. As she sipped the broth, she watched Morning Star continue to tend to Emma, whose breathing had grown more regular under the healer's care. "Will she be all right?" Sarah asked, her voice small in the gathering dusk. Morning Star met her gaze directly. "Strong spirit in a small body. Your sister fight hard. Sleep now." Exhaustion soon overcame Sarah's fear and grief. She curled beside Emma on the buffalo robe, the Bible still clutched tightly between them. Her last conscious thought before sleep claimed her was a confused prayer, part thanks to the God her parents had taught her about, and part to whatever spirits might have guided this Lakota woman to find them before the prairie claimed their lives. Morning Star settled beside the fire as the stars emerged overhead, her weathered face illuminated by the dancing flames. Zitkala joined her, her young features creased with concern. "The village elders will not approve," she said softly in Lakota. "Two Wasichu children here, when there is already talk of war against the settlers." Morning Star stirred the fire with a stick, watching the sparks rise toward the heavens. "The stars guided me to them for a reason, Zitkala. These children are not responsible for the actions of their people, just as our children are not responsible for the decisions of our warriors." "What will you do with them?" The older woman was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the sleeping twins. "First we heal their bodies, then perhaps their spirits. Beyond that," she shrugged, "the path will reveal itself when it is time to walk it." Inside the teepee, the Thompson twins slept fitfully, unaware that their futures had just been irrevocably altered by the compassion of a woman they had been raised to fear. A woman who had lost everything to people who looked just like them, yet still reached out her hand when it mattered most. The prairie wind whispered secrets across the grass, carrying both the echoes of yesterday's violence and the fragile promise of tomorrow's healing. Morning would bring difficult questions and uncertain paths, but for this moment, beneath the vast Dakota sky, three souls from different worlds had found a temporary peace in the simple act of human kindness. Dawn broke over the prairie with a palette of pinks and golds that belied the harsh realities of the Dakota Territory. Emma's fever had broken sometime in the night, and she awakened to find herself in surroundings so unfamiliar that for a moment she believed she must still be dreaming. The walls of the teepee rose around her, adorned with painted symbols she didn't understand. Strange scents filled the air, sage, sweetgrass, and herbs she couldn't identify. Panic surged through her until she felt Sarah's familiar presence beside her. Her sister was already awake, watching her with relief flooding her features. "You're better," Sarah whispered, pressing her forehead against Emma's in their private gesture of connection. "I was so scared." Emma's parched throat made speaking difficult. "Where are we? What happened?" Before Sarah could answer, the teepee's entrance flap opened, revealing Morningstar silhouetted against the early light. The Lakota woman entered carrying a small wooden bowl of water mixed with crushed mint. Her dark eyes assessed Emma carefully, noting the reduced flush of her skin and the clarity returning to her gaze. "Good. Child awake," she said in her limited English. "Drink now." Emma shrank back instinctively, years of stories about Indian savages rushing to the forefront of her mind. "It's all right," Sarah assured her. "She saved us when we were lost. She's been taking care of you all night." Morningstar waited patiently, holding the bowl without forcing it upon the frightened child. Her weathered face remained impassive, but her eyes held understanding. Fear was a natural response, especially from children who had likely been taught to view her people as enemies. Eventually, Emma's thirst overcame her fear. She accepted the bowl with trembling hands and sipped the cooling liquid. It tasted strange but not unpleasant, and the effect on her parched throat was immediate. "Thank you," she murmured, the courtesy her mother had instilled operating on instinct. Morningstar nodded once in acknowledgement. "Eat soon, rest more." She turned to leave, but paused when Sarah spoke. "Your name, what should we call you?" The Lakota woman considered for a moment. "My people call me Wichangpi Mazawakang, Morning Star in your tongue." "Morning Star," Sarah repeated carefully. "I'm Sarah. This is my sister Emma." Another nod, and then she was gone, leaving the twins to the relative privacy of the teepee. "How long have we been here?" Emma asked, her voice stronger after the mint water. "Since yesterday evening. You were so sick from the sun, Emma. She carried you all the way to her camp." Sarah clutched her sister's hand. "I think Mama and Papa would have been grateful to her." The mention of their parents sent a fresh wave of grief through both girls. They huddled together on the buffalo robe, finding solace in each other's presence as they had throughout their young lives. Outside, Morningstar stirred a pot of corn porridge hanging over the small fire. Zitkala approached from the direction of the main village, her expression troubled. "The council is meeting," she informed her mentor in Lakota. "Akecheta has told them about the Wasichu children." Morningstar continued stirring the porridge without visible reaction, though internally she had expected this development. Akecheta, a young warrior eager to prove himself, had been collecting wood near her camp yesterday evening and had undoubtedly seen her return with the twins. "Will you go to them?" Zitkala asked. "When the children have eaten, they will be weak for several days yet." Morningstar finally looked up at her apprentice. "The council's decision will wait that long." Zitkala hesitated, then lowered her a voice further. "There are rumors from the western camps, more killings of our people by Wasichu soldiers. The young men talk of war." This news troubled Morningstar more than the council's summons. Tensions between the Lakota and white settlers had been escalating for months, with provocations on both sides. If full-scale conflict erupted, the presence of two white children in their midst would become even more complicated. Rumors are like prairie winds, constant and often changing direction, she replied. We will face what comes when it arrives, not before. She dipped a wooden ladle into the porridge and filled 2 small bowls. Take these to the children. Then go to the river and gather more willow bark. I will need it for the younger ones. Continued treatment. Inside the tipi, the Thompson twins had progressed from grief to practicality, their young minds grappling with their new reality. Do you think she'll help us find other settlers? Emma asked, her fingers tracing the illustrations in their Bible, a habit that had always comforted her in times of stress. Sarah frowned. I don't know. Papa's settlement might not even exist, and we don't know where we are anymore. The teepee flap opened again, this time revealing Zitkala. The Lakota girl was tall for her 16 years. With a quiet dignity that made her seem older, she carried 2 bowls of steaming porridge, which she set down carefully before the twins. For strength, she said in halting English, clearly less practice than Morning Star. Eat. The twins exchanged glances before accepting the food. Their hunger, after nearly 2 days with minimal nourishment, overrode any remaining hesitation. The porridge was plain but filling, warmed with a hint of wild honey. Zitkala watched them eat with curiosity that matched their own. White children were as foreign to her as she was to them. When they had finished, she collected the empty bowls and departed without further words, leaving the twins once again to their whispered conversations. By midday, Emma felt strong enough to venture outside, the teepee leaning heavily on Sarah for support. The brightness of the sun still made her wince, but the cool compresses Morning Star had applied throughout the night had done much to heal her sunburn. The healers' camp was set apart from the main village, which the girls could see as a collection of teepees in the distance, situated in a shallow valley near the creek. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and they could make out the small figures of children playing and women working at various tasks. The sight filled them with equal parts fascination and trepidation. Morning Star sat cross-legged beside her fire, sorting through various plants and roots spread on a tanned hide before her. She glanced up as the twins emerged, her expression revealing nothing. Better now, she observed, looking at Emma. Sit. Sun is still the enemy until skin heals. She gestured to a shady spot beneath a cottonwood tree that stood beside her teepee. The girls obeyed, settling onto a woven mat placed there. Thank you for helping us, Emma said formally, finding her voice at last when addressing their rescuer. We would have died without you. Morning Star inclined her head slightly in acknowledgement. Great Spirit, put you in my path. Will your people be angry that you helped us? Sarah asked perceptively, having noticed the occasional distant figures, watching their camp with obvious curiosity and what seemed like disapproval. The healer's hands paused briefly in their work. Some understand only hate, she replied, but medicine woman helps all who suffer. This is our way. Our parents are dead, Emma blurted suddenly, as if the reality had just fully registered. Men attacked our wagon. We tried to bury them, but the ground was too hard, Sarah added, tears welling in her eyes. We covered them with canvas, but animals came in the night. Morning Star's expression softened fractionally. Hard journey to the spirit world. Not your fault. She selected a small piece of root from her collection and handed it to Emma. Chew this. Helps heart pain. Emma hesitantly placed the root in her mouth. It tasted bitter at first, then mellowed to something almost sweet. A curious calm gradually spread through her, not eliminating her grief, but making it somehow more bearable. When you are stronger, Morning Star continued, addressing both girls, we talk of what comes next. For now, rest, heal, grieve. A movement at the edge of the camp drew their attention. A man approached, tall and imposing, his chest bare except for a necklace of bear claws, his leggings adorned with intricate beadwork. His face was stern, his gaze fixed on Morning Star rather than the children. "Marker comes," Morning Star said quietly. "Chief's brother. Council sends him." She rose to meet the visitor, and a conversation ensued in rapid Lakota that the twins couldn't understand. The man's gestures became increasingly emphatic, occasionally pointing toward the girls with obvious disapproval. Morning Star's responses were measured, her stance unwavering despite the man's intimidating presence. "What are they saying?" Emma whispered to Sarah. "I don't know, but he doesn't look happy about us being here." Finally, the man, Marker, gave Morning Star what appeared to be an ultimatum before turning abruptly and striding back toward the main village. The healer returned to the girls, her expression grave. "Council wants to meet, I must go." She pointed to the teepee. "Stay inside. Zitkala will watch you." "Are they going to hurt us?" Emma asked, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. Morning Star's gaze was direct and honest. "Some wish to send you away. Some fear you bring trouble." She paused. "I will speak for you. Wait here." As Morning Star prepared to depart for the council meeting, Zitkala arrived with a bundle of freshly gathered willow bark. The apprentice's eyes widened when she saw her mentor donning her ceremonial medicine pouch and headband. "The council has called you formally," she observed in Lakota. "Yes, I need you to watch the Wasichu children. Do not let them wander, and do not let Akacheta or his friends near them." Morning Star secured the medicine pouch around her neck. "If I am not back by sunset, take them into the teepee and keep them quiet." Zitkala nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of the situation. The council rarely convened formally, except for matters of great importance to the tribe. After Morning Star departed, an uneasy silence fell over the camp. The twins retreated to the shade of the cottonwood tree, while Zitkala busied herself, preparing the willow bark, casting occasional glances toward the main village. "Do you think they'll make us leave?" Emma asked Sarah, her voice barely audible. Sarah squeezed her twin's hand. "Where would we go? We don't even know where the nearest white settlement is. Maybe Morning Star knows. She could point us in the right direction." "And then what? 2 girls alone with no supplies?" Sarah shook her head. "We wouldn't last another day." The harsh reality of their situation settled over them like a physical weight. Their survival had been miraculous once. They couldn't count on such fortune again. As the afternoon stretched on, Zitkala encouraged the girls to help her with simple tasks, stripping the willow bark into smaller pieces, sorting dried herbs into different pouches. The activity provided distraction and fostered a tentative connection despite the language barrier. Through gestures and simple English words, supplemented by the few Lakota terms Zitkala taught them, the girls learned that the young woman had been Morning Star's apprentice for 2 years. Her own mother had died in childbirth, and she had been raised by various women in the tribe until Morning Star recognized her gift for healing and took her as an apprentice. "Morning Star lose family," Zitkala explained haltingly. "Spotted fever. Sickness, husband, son, daughter." She held up 2 fingers to indicate the children's ages at death long ago. This revelation cast their rescuer in a new light for the twins. She too had experienced devastating loss, yet had continued her life's work of healing others. The sun had begun its descent toward the western horizon when they heard the sound of horses approaching. Zitkala quickly ushered the twins into the teepee, instructing them with urgent gestures to remain quiet. Through a small gap in the teepee flap, Sarah could see 4 mounted warriors arrive at the edge of Morning Star's camp. Their faces were painted with red and black stripes, and they carried lances adorned with feathers and small animal skulls. One of them, younger than the others, with a thin scar across his cheek, dismounted and approached the fire, where Zitkala Now stood alone. Akacheta, the girls heard Zitkala say, her voice firm despite her youth. The medicine woman is with the council. We know where she is, the young warrior replied in Lakota, his tone contemptuous. We came to see the Wasichu children. She values her own people's safety. They are under Morningstar's protection. You have no right to disturb her healing space. Akacheta's laugh held no humor. Healing space? She harbors the enemy's offspring while our brothers to the west are being slaughtered by blue-coat soldiers. He took a step toward the teepee, but Zitkala moved to block his path. The council will decide their fate. Until then, they are not your concern. For a tense moment, it seemed the young warrior might push past her. Inside the teepee, Emma clutched Sarah's hand so tightly that both their knuckles went white. Then, one of the mounted warriors called out something that made Akacheta hesitate. The council returns, Zitkala translated for herself, relief evident in her voice. Indeed, a procession was approaching from the village, several elders flanked by warriors, with Morningstar walking among them. The group moved with deliberate ceremony, their expressions solemn. Akacheta and his companions retreated a respectful distance, but did not leave. The air was charged with tension as the council members formed a semicircle at the edge of Morningstar's camp. An elderly man with a face deeply etched by time stepped forward. His headdress of eagle feathers marked him as a chief, and the deference shown by the others confirmed his importance. He spoke at length in Lakota, his voice carrying the weight of authority. When he finished, Morningstar turned toward the teepee. Emma, Sarah, come. The twins emerged hesitantly from their shelter, blinking in the late afternoon sunlight. All eyes turned to them, some curious, some hostile, some simply assessing. This is Chief Running Elk, Morningstar introduced the elderly man. He speaks for the council. The chief studied the girls for a long moment before speaking in Lakota. Morningstar translated his words. Our tribe faces difficult times. The Wasichu, white men, push further into our hunting grounds each season. They break treaties, bring diseases, kill the buffalo we depend upon. She paused as the chief continued. Some of our young men wish to make war. They say, no white. In person can be trusted, not even children. Emma pressed closer to Sarah, who stood straighter, trying to appear brave for both of them. Others remember that children do not choose the sins of their fathers, Morningstar continued translating. The council has decided that wisdom lies in understanding the difference between justice and vengeance. Chief Running Elk raised his hand, and a murmur passed through the assembled tribal members. Morningstar's expression remained carefully neutral as she translated his proclamation. The twin daughters of the Wasichu will remain under Morningstar's protection for 7 suns. In this time, she will teach them our ways and judge if their hearts are pure. After 7 suns, the council will meet again to decide their final fate. Akacheta stepped forward, protesting loudly in Lakota. The chief silenced him with a sharp gesture, adding words that Morningstar did not immediately translate. What did he say? Sarah asked quietly. Morningstar's gaze met hers directly. He said that if trouble comes because of you, before the 7 suns have passed, your lives will answer for it. With this sobering declaration, the council dispersed, leaving Morningstar alone with the twins and Zitkala. Akacheta and his warriors departed last, the young man casting a final glare toward the girls before galloping away. As twilight deepened across the prairie, Morningstar built up the fire and prepared a simple meal of dried buffalo meat softened in a broth with wild onions and prairie turnips. The 4 females ate in silence, each absorbed in her own thoughts about what the coming days might bring. Later, as the stars emerged overhead, countless pinpricks of light in the vast Dakota sky, Morningstar sat with the twins outside the teepee. The night air had grown cool, and she had wrapped them in rabbit fur blankets that smelled of cedar and sweetgrass. 7 days, Sarah finally said. What happens after that? Morning Star gazed up at the stars that had given her her name. Path not yet clear, but tonight you live. Tonight you are safe. She pointed to a bright cluster of stars. 7 sisters dance there. Like you, they stay together, always. The Pleiades. Emma identified the constellation, recalling her father's lessons in astronomy during their long journey west. Papa called them that. Morning Star nodded. Many names for the same stars, different words, same light. She regarded the twins thoughtfully. Tomorrow you learn. Our ways, our words. Show counsel your hearts open. As the twins prepared for sleep that night, curled together on the buffalo robe in the teepee, they whispered to each other of their uncertainty and fear, but also of the strange sense of security they felt in morning. Stars camp despite the clear dangers that surrounded them. Do you think she'll really protect us? Emma murmured. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Yes, she finally answered. She already has. When everyone wanted to send us away, or worse, she stood for us. But 7 days isn't very long. What happens then? I don't know. But we're together. That's what matters most. Outside, Morning Star sat by the dying embers of the fire, her weathered hands methodically grinding healing herbs with a stone mortar and pestle. Her thoughts were troubled, though her face revealed nothing. The council's decision had been as favorable as she could have hoped for, but she harbored no illusions about the precariousness of the situation. To the east, the Wasichu would be searching for survivors or seeking revenge for the massacred Wagon party. To the west, violence between soldiers and Lakota warriors grew with each passing moon. And within the tribe itself, young men like Akacheta looked for any excuse to prove themselves through conflict rather than wisdom. In the midst of these gathering storms stood 2 innocent children, orphaned by the very tensions that now threatened. To claim them as well, Morning Star added more herbs to her mixture, imbuing it with protective prayers. 7 days was not long to build a bridge between worlds that seemed determined to remain apart. Yet, as she glanced toward the teepee where the twins now slept, she felt a certainty that transcended logic. These children had been placed in her path for a reason. The same stars that had guided her to them in the prairie would illuminate the way forward, if only she had the wisdom to read their light correctly. The first of the council's 7 allotted days dawned with Morning Star gently shaking the twins awake before sunrise. Outside, the eastern horizon was just beginning to lighten, the stars still visible overhead. Come, she instructed, handing each girl a small cup of warm tea. Day begins with greeting the sun. The twins followed groggily, clutching their rabbit, for blankets around their shoulders against the pre-dawn chill. Morning Star led them to a small rise near her camp, where Zitkala already waited, her face turned expectantly toward the east. Sit, the healer directed, lowering herself to the ground in a cross-legged position. Watch, listen. The 4 females sat in silence as the first golden rim of the sun appeared on the horizon. Morning Star began to sing softly, her voice joining with Zitkala's in a melody that seemed to rise and fall with the land itself. Though the words were in Lakota, the reverence in their voices transcended language. As the sun cleared the horizon, bathing the prairie in amber light, Morning Star produced a small pouch from within her dress. From it, she withdrew pinches of tobacco, which she sprinkled in the 4 cardinal directions while murmuring prayers. When the ceremony was complete, she turned to the twins. Each day begins with thanks, she explained, for light returning, for life continuing. This is first Lakota lesson. Emma and Sarah nodded solemnly, struck by the simple beauty of the ritual. Their own parents had taught them to say grace before meals and prayers before bed, but this connection to the natural world felt both foreign and somehow familiar. as if they were learning a new dialect of a language they already partially understood. "Now work," Morningstar announced, rising to her feet with the fluid grace that belied her years. "Empty stomachs make poor students." Back at camp, Morningstar assigned each girl tasks suited to their strength and abilities. Sarah, the more dexterous of the twins, was set to working with Zitkala, learning to grind corn between stones to make meal for the morning porridge. Emma, still recovering her strength, was taught to sort through Morningstar's collection of dried herbs, separating them by type into small parfleche containers. "This is for fever," Morningstar explained, holding up a crumbled leaf. "This is for stomach pain. This is for wounds that weep." She named each plant in both Lakota and English, testing the girls afterward to ensure they remembered. By midday, the twins had learned a dozen Lakota words, prepared their first meal under Morningstar's guidance, and begun to understand the structured rhythm of daily life in the camp. They were washing wooden bowls in a small basin when the sound of approaching horses caught their attention. 3 women from the main village approached, riding bareback on paint ponies. They carried bundles wrapped in tanned hides, and their expressions as they regarded the twins ranged from curiosity to thinly veiled hostility. Morningstar greeted them formally in Lakota, accepting the bundles with murmured thanks before the women departed, casting backward glances at Emma and Sarah. "What did they bring?" Sarah asked, her natural curiosity overcoming her shyness. Morningstar unwrapped the bundles to reveal children's clothing, simple dresses of soft deer hide, moccasins, decorated with quill work and leggings for the cooler evenings. "Your dresses." She gestured to the twins' filthy, torn clothing that still bore traces of flour and dust from the wagon attack. "Not good here. These are better for prairie life." Emma touched the deerskin dresses hesitantly. "They gave us their children's clothes?" "Chief's wife, Singing Bird, has daughters. These no longer fit them." Morningstar's expression softened slightly. "Not all among us see only enemies when they look at you." The gift represented a gesture of acceptance, or at least tolerance, from at least some members of the tribe. The twins changed into Lakota clothing, helping each other with the unfamiliar fastenings. The soft leather felt strange against skin, accustomed to cotton, but the garments were well made and comfortable. Looking at each other in their new attire, both girls experienced a moment of dissonance. They were the same children who had left Pennsylvania months ago, yet transformed by tragedy and circumstance into something their parents could never have imagined. "We look like Indian girls," Emma whispered, smoothing the front of her dress with wonder. "Lakota," Sarah corrected, having absorbed Morningstar's earlier lesson on the proper name for her people. "We look like Lakota girls." The afternoon brought new lessons. Morningstar led them to the creek, where she demonstrated how to identify plants that grew along the water's edge. Some for medicine, some for food, some for crafting dyes and tools. The twins learned to tell which berries were safe to eat and which might bring sickness or death, which roots could be harvested now and which should be left until autumn. "All life connected," Morningstar explained, as she showed them how to gather watercress without harming the plant's roots. "Take only what is needed. Give thanks. Leave enough for tomorrow." The concept resonated with the practical conservation their father had taught them on their small Pennsylvania farm, where nothing was wasted and resources were carefully managed. For future seasons, as sunset approached, Morningstar directed the twins to gather wood for the evening fire. They worked together, collecting fallen branches from around the perimeter of the camp, careful not to stray too far as instructed. Near a stand of chokecherry bushes, Emma froze. "Sarah," she whispered, "look!" A young Lakota boy of perhaps 10 years stood watching them, a rabbit slung over his shoulder, evidence of a successful hunt. Unlike Akecheta and his warriors, his expression held no hostility, only intense curiosity. Sarah stepped forward, her handful of sticks clutched to her chest. "Hello," she offered in English, then remembered one of the morning's lessons. "How?" she tried in Lakota. The boy's solemn face broke into a surprised smile. "How?" he repeated, then added something in Lakota too rapid for the twins to understand. He approached cautiously, studying their blonde hair and blue eyes with fascination. After a moment he reached out and touched Sarah's braid gently, as if to confirm it was real. "Wowawala," he said, pointing to her hair. "Thatankahu," he added, touching the buffalo bone hair ornament that Zitkala had fastened into Sarah's braid that morning. The twins smiled, recognizing his attempt to teach them words as they attempted to learn his language. Emma pointed to the rabbit over his shoulder. "Rabbit," she said in English. "What is Lakota word?" "Mashting chala," the boy replied, his pronunciation deliberate to help them learn. "Mashting chala," the twins repeated together, earning another smile from the boy. The unexpected language lesson continued until a woman's voice called from beyond the chokecherry bushes. The boy glanced over his shoulder, called a response, then turned back to the twins with a regretful expression. "He chetu," he said, which Morningstar had taught them meant goodbye, before disappearing toward the voice. The twins returned to camp with their wood and the story of their encounter. Morningstar listened with interest as they proudly demonstrated the new words they had learned. Little Hawk, she identified their teacher. Grandson of elder woman who sings. Good boy. Bold. Like a hawk. "He wasn't afraid of us," Emma observed. "Not like the others. Children see with clearer eyes," Morningstar replied, "before the world teaches fear." That evening, as they ate a stew of rabbit and wild turnips, Zitkala taught the twins a simple Lakota song about meadowlarks. Their voices rose together in the gathering darkness, stumbling over unfamiliar sounds, but gaining confidence with each repetition. From the edge of the firelight, Maka appeared silently, watching the impromptu music lesson with an inscrutable expression. Morningstar acknowledged him with a nod, but did not interrupt the girls' singing. When the song concluded, he spoke briefly in Lakota and departed as quietly as he had arrived. "What did he say?" Sarah asked. Morningstar's expression revealed nothing. "He says, council watches. Some approve, some do not." 2 days now passed. Since 7. The reminder of their deadline hung in the air, tempering the day's small victories with uncertainty. That night, as the twins prepared for sleep, Emma removed their Bible from the small bundle of possessions they had salvaged from the wagon. She turned the pages carefully until she found the 23rd Psalm, which their mother had often read to them. "Do you think God can hear us here?" she asked softly. "Among the Lakota?" Sarah considered this theological question seriously. "Papa always said God is everywhere, and Morningstar prays too, just differently. Should we still say our prayers? I think Mama and Papa would want us to." The twins bowed their heads together over the Bible, reciting the familiar words of the Lord's Prayer in whispered unison. When they finished, they added their own requests for their parents' souls, for Morningstar's protection, for guidance about their uncertain future. Outside the teepee, Morningstar sat by the fire, listening to the faint murmurs of the children's prayers. She recognized the cadence of spiritual communion, even if the words and deity were different from her own traditions. The sincerity of their faith touched her, reminding her of her own children's innocent certainty before disease had claimed them. The 3rd day brought a new challenge. Morningstar woke the twins before dawn, but instead of the usual sunrise ceremony, she instructed them to prepare for a journey. "Today, you come to the village," she announced. "Meet council, show learning, The twins exchanged nervous glances. Until now, the main Lakota encampment had remained a distant collection of teepees, a place glimpsed but not entered. "Will they want us there?" Emma asked, voicing their shared concern. "Want, not want. Not important," Morningstar replied pragmatically. "Council must see you, judge progress." Zitkala helped the girls prepare, braiding their hair in Lakota style and adding small feathers and bone beads. She painted a single red line across each of their foreheads, for protection, she explained, and instructed them in the proper way to accept food if offered, how to sit in the presence of elders, and which gestures might be considered disrespectful. The walk to the village seemed both too short and interminable. As they approached, daily activities paused, residents turning to watch their procession with expressions ranging from outright hostility to guarded interest. Little Hawk, their friend from the chokecherry bushes, waved enthusiastically from outside. A tipi where an elderly woman, presumably elder woman who sings, sat working on a quilled moccasin. Several other children edged closer, clearly curious about these strange, pale-haired newcomers, until stern words from their mothers called them back. Morningstar led them directly to a large teepee in the center of the village. Outside stood Chief, Running Elk and several other elders, clearly awaiting their arrival. The chief's face remained impassive as he studied the twins in their Lakota clothing, their hair braided in the tribe's style, the protective paint marking their foreheads. A lengthy exchange in Lakota followed, with Morningstar occasionally, gesturing toward the girls as she spoke. Finally, Chief Running Elk addressed them directly. "Medicine Woman says you learn our ways. Show respect." His English was accented but clear. "This is good, but some say wolf cub raised by Lakota still grows to be wolf." The twins stood straighter under his scrutiny, instinctively holding hands. "For courage, we are grateful to Morning Star," Sarah responded carefully. "She saved us when no one else would. We try to learn with open hearts." Emma nodded in agreement. "We have nowhere else to go," she added with simple honesty. "Our family is gone." The chief considered them for a long moment. Loss of family. This pain Lakota know too well. He glanced at Morning Star. 3 more days, council watches, then decides. With that, he gestured toward a group of women who had gathered nearby. One stepped forward, a handsome, middle-aged woman wearing an elaborately beaded dress and multiple necklaces that marked her status. "Singing Bird," Morning Star murmured to the twins. "Chief's wife, she who sent clothes." Singing Bird inspected the twins with keen interest, adjusting the fit of their dresses with practiced hands and nodding approval at Zitkala's handiwork with their hair. She spoke rapidly to Morning Star, who translated, "She asks if you know. Women's work. Cooking, sewing, gathering." "Our mother taught us to cook and sew," Sarah replied, "but differently than your ways." This was conveyed to Singing Bird, who seemed to make a decision. She spoke again, gesturing toward a group of women grinding corn between stones. "She wishes you to join the women's circle," Morningstar explained. "Learn Lakota women's ways." The twins looked to Morningstar uncertainly. Until now, they had remained under her direct supervision. "Go," she encouraged them. "I speak with the council. Zitkala stays with you." Thus began one of the most educational days of the twins' young lives. Under Singing Bird's direction, they were incorporated into the daily activities of the Lakota women. They learned to scrape a buffalo hide with stone tools, to thread porcupine quills for decorative work, to identify which plants yielded the most vibrant dyes. The language barrier presented challenges, but gestures, demonstrations, and their growing vocabulary of Lakota words bridged many gaps. Zitkala remained nearby, translating when necessary, though Singing Bird seemed determined that the twins learn through observation and practice rather than explanation. By midday, the initial wary distance had begun to dissolve. Emma's careful attention to detail and Sarah's quick dexterity earned approving nods from the women. When Little Hawk and several other children approached with handfuls of freshly picked berries to share, the women did not call them away. The children's natural curiosity created an unexpected language exchange. The Lakota children were as eager to learn English words as the twins were to learn Lakota. They taught each other names for body parts, animals, and objects around the village, dissolving into giggles at mispronunciations. From the council teepee, Morning Star observed this integration with cautious optimism. The children's innocent interactions were breaking down barriers that adults had reinforced for generations. Yet she was too wise to believe that a single day of harmony could erase the deeper conflicts that surrounded them. Her discussions with the council had been difficult. News had arrived from the western bands, more skirmishes with blue-coat soldiers, more broken promises from Washington, more Lakota dead. Akacheta and his followers had argued forcefully that harboring any Wasichu, even children, sent a message of weakness when strength was needed. Only the influence of Chief Running Elk and the respect accorded to Morning Star as a healer had prevented an immediate decision to send the twins away, or worse. Late afternoon brought storm clouds from the west, sending the village into a flurry of activity as women secured drying meat, gathered children, and ensured teepees were properly staked against the coming wind. The twins worked alongside their new acquaintances, helping where they could, following instructions conveyed through gestures and simple words. As the first heavy drops began to fall, Morning Star collected the girls, leading them and Zitkala quickly back toward her separate camp. They were halfway there when a rider approached at a gallop, his horse's hooves throwing mud as he reined to a stop before them. It was one of the young warriors who had accompanied Akacheta to Morning Star's camp days earlier. His face was grim as he delivered his message in rapid Lakota. Morning Star's expression hardened as she listened. Then she turned to Zitkala. "Take girls to my tipi. Stay inside. I will come soon." "What's happening?" Sarah asked, alarmed by the urgency in Morning Star's voice. "Riders coming from the east," the healer explained tersely. "Wasichu soldiers, searching." The twins exchanged stricken glances. American soldiers would be searching for survivors of wagon trains, investigating reports of attacks. Under normal circumstances, the arrival of cavalry would have meant rescue for the orphaned girls. But nothing about their situation was normal. They stood with Lakota paint on their foreheads, wearing Lakota clothing in the company of a Lakota healer. And soldiers rarely differentiated between hostile and peaceful native people, especially in territories where tensions ran high. "What will happen to you if they find us here?" Emma asked, suddenly understanding the complexity of their position. Morning Star's gaze was steady. "Go with Zitkala, now." They ran through the intensifying rain, reaching Morning Star's teepee just as thunder cracked overhead. Inside, Zitkala immediately began securing the entrance flap against the storm while directing the twins to sit at the rear of the dwelling. "Soldiers? Bad?" Sarah asked her, struggling to form the question with her limited Lakota vocabulary. "Many. Angry after fighting west," Zitkala replied, mixing Lakota and English. "See Lakota, think enemy." "But we're not Lakota," Emma objected. She faltered, suddenly uncertain how to define themselves. Not quite settlers anymore, with their family and future erased in a single violent afternoon. Not Lakota, despite the clothes they wore and the lessons they'd begun to learn. "You Morning Stars now," Zitkala said simply. "She choose you, protect you." The implication was clear. Morning Star had put herself at risk by taking in the white children. The approaching soldiers represented a threat not just to the twins' precarious new existence, but to the woman who had saved them. Rain pounded the teepee as the girls waited, the tension inside matching the storm outside. After what seemed an eternity, the entrance flap opened, admitting Morning Star along with a gust of wind and rain. Her dress was soaked, her hair plastered to her face, but her movements were quick and decisive. "Soldiers camp at Creek Bend," she informed them, wringing water from her braids. "Chief Running Elk speaks with them now, says no white children here." "He's lying for us?" Sarah asked, surprised. "Protecting tribe," Morningstar corrected. "Soldiers not just search. Count weapons, map village. Always before an attack comes, search." She moved around the teepee, gathering items into a small parfleche. "A bag, medicines, a flint striker, dried meat, a water skin. Tomorrow council meets earlier than planned," she continued, her hands never ceasing their preparations. "Tonight, we are ready for any path spirit shows." The implications were clear. The arrival of soldiers had accelerated the timeline for deciding the twins' fate, and Morning Star was preparing for all possibilities, including the need to flee. "What should we do?" Emma asked, her voice small against the drumming rain. Morning. Star paused in her work, regarding both girls with an intensity that seemed to reach into their very souls. "Tonight pray to your God. I pray to the Great Spirit. Ask the same question. Where do you belong now?" She resumed packing the parfleche. "Tomorrow the answer comes." That night, huddled together beneath buffalo robes as the storm raged outside, the twins whispered to each other of all that had transpired in the remarkable day, the tentative connections formed with the Lakota women and children, the skills they had begun to learn, the sense of belonging that had flickered, however briefly, during their time in the village. "What do you think will happen tomorrow?" Emma asked. Sarah was silent for a long moment. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "But Morning Star won't abandon us. I'm sure of it." "How can you be so certain?" "Because she sees us," Sarah said simply. "Not just as white children or orphans or problems to solve. She sees us, Emma and Sarah." Outside, the storm began to subside, the thunder moving eastward across the prairie. Morning Star sat by the small fire at the center of the teepee, adding sacred herbs that filled the air with a sweet, pungent scent. Her lips moved in silent prayer as she contemplated the forces now converging on her small camp. Soldiers from the east, tribal politics from within, and the uncertain future of two children who had been placed in her care by forces she recognized as divine intervention. 3 days had passed of the Council's 7, but tomorrow would bring a reckoning no one had anticipated when that timeline was established. As the rain gentled to a soft patter on the tippy covering, Morning Star closed her eyes, listening for guidance in the rhythm of the falling water and the faint breathing of the children who had come to mean more to her than she had ever expected. Dawn broke with unusual silence. The storm had washed the world clean, leaving behind a sky of pristine blue and air fragrant with damp earth and sage. But the tranquility was deceptive. Morning Star sensed tension humming through the land like distant thunder. She woke the twins early, before the sun had fully cleared the horizon. "Dress quickly," she instructed. "Council waits." Emma and Sarah exchanged nervous glances as they donned their Lakota garments. The arrival of soldiers had changed everything, accelerating decisions and raising stakes neither girl fully comprehended. "Will they send us away?" Emma asked, voicing their shared fear as Morning Star helped them apply the red ochre line across their foreheads. No longer just a symbol of protection, but a statement of belonging. The healer's weathered hands paused momentarily. "Many paths possible," she replied. "Be honest, show respect. Rest is in greater hands than ours." Zitkala entered the teepee with news. "Soldiers still at Creek Bend. More will arrive at night." Morning Star nodded, her expression revealing nothing. "Council knows, watches, waits." She turned to the twins. "Time to go. The walk to the village. felt different from yesterday's journey. The Lakota people they passed were subdued, adults speaking in hushed tones. Children kept close, rather than running free. Everyone seemed acutely aware of the soldiers camped just beyond the creek bend, close enough to reach the village in minutes if they chose to ride in. When they reached the central gathering place, they found the full council already assembled. Not just Chief Running Elk and the male elders, but the influential women of the tribe as well, including Singing Bird. This was no ordinary meeting, but a critical decision that would affect the entire community. The twins stood before this assembly, conscious of every pair of eyes evaluating them. Morning Star positioned herself slightly behind them, present for support, but making it clear they would speak for themselves. Chief Running Elk raised his hand for silence, though little sound disturbed the morning air. He spoke in Lakota first, then repeated himself in careful English for the twins' benefit. Soldiers say children are missing from wagon trains, searching all lands between Great River and mountains. His gaze fell on Emma and Sarah. They ask if we have seen white children. Sarah swallowed hard. What did you tell them? That Lakota see many things on the prairie, but keep no white children. The chief's expression remained unreadable. Not lie. Question is, what are you now? Still Wasichu children, or becoming something else? It was a profound question that cut to the heart of their precarious situation. 3 days ago, they had been unquestionably white settlers' children, strangers, in Lakota territory. But something had shifted during their time with Morning Star, a transformation neither girl could fully articulate, but both felt deeply. We were born to white parents, Emma said slowly, finding courage in the gravity of the moment. But they're gone now. Morning Star found us when we were dying, Sarah continued. She taught us, fed us, protected us. The women of your tribe showed us kindness yesterday. She gestured to Singing Bird, who inclined her head slightly in acknowledgement. In our Bible, Emma added, there's a story of a woman named Ruth who lost everything. She told her husband's mother, your people will be my people. We feel this way about Morning Star. A murmur passed through the council at this unexpected reference. Morning Star translated the biblical allusion for those who didn't understand English, her voice steady despite the emotion these words clearly evoked. Maka stepped forward, his expression stern. He addressed the council in Lakota, gesturing emphatically toward the creek where the soldiers camped, occasionally pointing at the twins. His speech grew increasingly passionate, drawing nods from several younger council members. When he finished, Morning Star provided a brief translation. He says soldiers search for an excuse to attack. If they discover you here, they will claim Lakota stole white children. Many will die. Before the twins could respond, Singing Bird rose from her place in the circle. Her presence commanded immediate respect as she spoke, her voice melodic but firm. Though the twins couldn't understand her words, they noted how the council members, even Maka, listened attentively. Chief Running Elk translated this time. My wife reminds the council that Lakota have lost many children to Wasichu. Disease, Wasichu bullets. Great Spirit perhaps sends these children as replacement for those taken from us. This perspective clearly resonated with several of the older women in the circle, who nodded in agreement. But Akacheta, standing at the edge of the council with his fellow warriors, stepped forward uninvited. Give white children to soldiers, he said directly in English, having clearly learned the language during previous encounters. Tell them we found wandering. Take reward they offer, then they leave our land. His pragmatic suggestion hung in the air. It was in many ways the most logical solution, restoring the twins to their own people while potentially easing tensions. With the military, yet the thought sent a chill through both girls. "The soldiers didn't protect us before," Sarah said quietly. "They didn't stop the men who killed our parents. And they're still not catching those men," Emma added with unexpected fire. "They're blaming your people instead." This insight, that the soldiers were likely attributing settler deaths to Lakota raids rather than investigating the actual perpetrators, wasn't lost on the council. Several elders exchanged glances, recognizing the truth in the child's observation. "Elder woman who sings," Little Hawk's grandmother, spoke for the first time. Though her words were in Lakota, her gnarled finger pointed directly at Morning Star as she addressed the council at length. When she finished, Chief Running Elk nodded respectfully. "Eldest mother reminds us, medicine woman lost 2 children to spotted fever. Now the Great Spirit sends 2 children to her healing hands, this balance in all things." Morningstar's composure wavered slightly at this reference to her long-ago loss. The twins, hearing this confirmation of what Zitkala had told them about their protector's past, unconsciously moved closer to the healer who had become so much, more than a rescuer to them. The council fell into deep discussion, various members speaking in turn as tradition dictated. The twins watched this deliberation with mounting anxiety, understanding that their future hung on the consensus these people would reach. Finally, Chief Running Elk raised his hand for silence. The debate ceased immediately, all eyes turning to him as he rose to his feet. "Council has heard many voices," he announced. "Now I must decide. But first," he turned to Morning Star, "medicine woman found these children, healed them, taught them. What says your heart?" It was an extraordinary moment, the chief publicly asking for her personal feelings rather than just her assessment as a healer. Morning Star seemed momentarily taken aback by the direct question, her customary reserve faltering. Her gaze moved from the chief to the twins, who looked back at her with trust and hope that squeezed her heart in ways she had not felt since losing her own children. When she spoke, her voice carried a depth of emotion the girls had never heard from her before. "These children came to me between life and death," she said in Lakota, then repeated in English for the twins' benefit. "Great Spirit put them in my path when their spirits might have joined their ancestors. I did not choose this responsibility. It chose me." She placed a hand gently on each twin's shoulder. "In 4 days, I have watched them learn our ways with open hearts. They bring no hatred, no deception, only willingness to become something new." Her voice strengthened with conviction. "I stand for them as I would my own daughters." The declaration resonated through the gathering like a stone dropped in still water. Even Akacheta and Maka seemed affected by the raw honesty in the normally reserved healer's words. Chief Running Elk nodded slowly, as if Morning Star's statement had confirmed something he already suspected. He conferred briefly with the oldest members of the council before speaking again. "Council decides the girls who came as Wasichu children will stay with Morning Star, not as captives, not as strangers, but as daughters of her heart. They will learn our ways fully, speak our language, understand our struggles." His gaze swept the assembly. "Lakota people will know them as Morning Star's daughters, deserving of same protection as any child of our tribe." A murmur passed through the gathering, not entirely approval, but acceptance of the chief's wisdom. Even those who had argued against keeping the twins seemed unwilling to challenge this formal adoption. "And the soldiers?" Maka asked, giving voice to the question on everyone's mind. "They search for stolen children," Chief Running Elk replied. "They find none here, only Lakota families." His meaning was clear. The twins were no longer to be considered white children, but members of the tribe through adoption, a practice with long precedent among native peoples. The chief turned back. "Do the twins, this path not easy, must learn deeply, truly become Lakota in heart, no halfway walking between worlds." Emma and Sarah nodded solemnly, understanding the magnitude of what was being offered, not just shelter or temporary protection, but a new identity, a new family, A new future. We understand, Sarah said, instinctively reaching for morning stars. Unhand. And we're grateful. Emma nodded in agreement, though a shadow of uncertainty flickered across her young face, a natural hesitation at the enormity of the transformation being asked of them. Morning Star noticed this hesitation. Children need time, she told the chief. Heart changes slowly, like a river changes course, cannot force. Chief Running Elk acknowledged this wisdom with a nod. 7 suns now become many moons. They learn, they grow in Lakota ways. His expression hardened slightly, but protection requires commitment. If white soldiers come with questions, they must show they belong to us completely. With this declaration, the council dispersed, its momentous decision made. As the twins walked back to Morning Star's camp, flanked by the healer and Zitkala, they struggled to process the implications of what had just occurred. Are we really Lakota now? Emma asked, her voice small with wonder and uncertainty. In the eyes of the tribe, yes, Morning Star confirmed. In your hearts, this journey is just beginning. What about our parents? Sarah asked. And our family in Pennsylvania? Won't they wonder what happened to us? Morning Star's expression softened with compassion. Can honor those gone while walking a new path? Old family lives in memory in prayers. New family stands beside you now. This balance, honoring their past while embracing a new future, would become the defining challenge of the twins' transformation. As they reached Morning Star's teepee, they found Little Hawk waiting. With his grandmother, Elder Woman Who Sings, the old woman carried a small bundle wrapped in soft tanned hide. Welcome gift, she explained through Morning Star's translation, for new daughters of tribe. Inside the bundle, the twins found 2 identical necklaces, simple leather cords strung with carved bone beads and small buffalo horn pendants. Horn. From the same buffalo, Elder Woman Who Sings explained. Like you, 2 from one beginning. The twins accepted this meaningful gift with appropriate solemnity, allowing Morning Star to place the necklaces around their necks, while Elder Woman Who Sings sang a blessing in a voice that belied her advanced years. Little Hawk watched the ceremony with bright-eyed interest. When it concluded, he approached the girls with the direct manner of childhood. Now you are Lakota, he said in his limited English. I teach you to hunt, ride a horse. His easy acceptance contrasted sharply with the complexity the adults recognized. In the situation, to Little Hawk, the matter was simple. Yesterday, these girls had been interesting strangers. Today, they were new members of his community. As Morning Star prepared a meal to celebrate the council's decision, Zitkala took the twins aside, her expression serious despite the apparently positive outcome. Soldiers are still danger, she reminded them in her mixture of English and Lakota. Must learn quickly how to act, how to speak. If they question, we understand, Sarah assured her. We won't do anything to put Morning Star or the tribe in danger. Zitkala nodded, satisfied with their comprehension of the stakes involved. Then first lesson, new names. This unexpected statement caught both girls by surprise. New names, Emma repeated. Lakota daughters, Lakota names, Zitkala explained. Morning Star choose sacred names, give in ceremony when ready, but I need everyday names now. The realization that they would relinquish even their names in this transformation was momentarily overwhelming. Their names, given by parents now, buried on the prairie, represented one of the few connections remaining to their former lives. Can we help choose? Sarah asked, seeking some control in this accelerating metamorphosis. Zitkala considered this request, then nodded. Morning Star will listen. Names must have meaning, show spirit. Throughout the meal, they discussed possibilities. with Morning Star explaining traditional Lakota naming practices and the significance of connecting one's name to natural elements, animal characteristics, or spiritual insights. By evening, possibilities had emerged that seemed to capture something essential about each twin. For Sarah, with her quick mind and readiness to engage with new experiences, Zitkalatanka, or Great Bird, acknowledging her capacity to soar beyond limitations. For Emma, more thoughtful and observant, Wachangpi Washte, or Sweet. Berry, recognizing her quiet sweetness and nourishing presence. Names grow with you, Morning Star explained. Change as you change. First names, not last names. When ready for sacred names, we'll know. As twilight settled over the prairie, a visitor arrived at Morning Star's camp, Maka, his expression grim as he spoke rapidly to the healer in Lakota. Soldiers send scouts closer to the village, Morning Star translated for the twins. Watch. All movements. Chief sends a warning. Be prepared. Prepared for what? Emma asked anxiously. Questions. Maybe more. Morning Star's gaze was steady. Tomorrow you stay in camp. Learn more Lakota words. Practice being daughters of Morning Star. Her hand moved to the knife at her belt, a subtle but clear indication that the threat might extend beyond mere questioning. After Maka departed, the twins helped prepare the teepee for night, their movements subdued by the weight of the days. Events and the uncertainty that still shadowed their future. Are you afraid? Emma whispered to Sarah as they laid out their sleeping robes. Sarah considered the question honestly. Yes, she admitted, but less afraid than I was alone on the prairie. At least now we have Morning Star. And each other, Emma added, reaching for her twin's hand in their familiar gesture of connection. As night deepened, Morning Star sat cross-legged at the teepee's entrance, smoking a small pipe in the traditional manner, offering the smoke to the four directions, to the Sky Father and Earth Mother. The aromatic tobacco carried her prayers upward, seeking guidance and protection for the unusual family now forming under her care. Outside, beyond the boundaries of the Lakota encampment, campfires of the soldiers burned against the darkness. Two worlds, divided by history, misunderstanding, and conflict, existed in dangerous proximity. Between them, two young girls slept beneath buffalo robes, their dreams filled with images from both the life they had lost and the one they were. Just beginning, Morning Star watched over them, her heart both troubled and oddly at peace. The path ahead would not be easy. The soldiers' presence guaranteed that. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, perhaps even direct confrontation. But tonight, for the first time since spotted fever had emptied her arms of her own children, she felt the sacred weight of motherhood settle once more upon her shoulders. She sang softly, an ancient lullaby her own mother had sung to her, her voice blending with the night sounds of the prairie, the distant howl of coyotes, the rustle of wind through grass, the eternal conversation between earth and sky. In this moment, despite the dangers gathering beyond their small circle of firelight, they were family, brought together by tragedy, but bound now by something stronger than blood, the conscious choice to become part of each other's salvation. Morning Star added another pinch of tobacco to her pipe, sending a fresh plume of smoke toward the star-filled sky. "Protect my daughters," she whispered in Lakota to the ancestors and spirits who had guided her life. "Give me strength to keep them safe. In the difficult days that come." The embers glowed briefly brighter, as if in answer to her prayer, then settled into a steady burn, constant, enduring, transformative, like the love taking root in a heart long closed by grief, now opening again to embrace two unexpected daughters. Of different blood but kindred spirit, morning arrived with the pounding of hooves. Emma and Sarah jerked awake, instinctively huddling together as Morning Star rose swiftly from her place by the dying fire. Her hand moved to the knife at her belt as she peered through the teepee's entrance. "Stay inside," she instructed the twins. Her voice low but urgent. No matter what happens, no English words. Remember Lakota lessons. Before they could respond, she slipped outside to meet whoever approached. The twins exchanged frightened glances, remembering Maka's warning the previous evening. Had the soldiers finally come? Sarah crept to the teepee entrance, carefully pulling back the flap just enough to peek outside. Emma joined her, both girls straining to see while remaining hidden. Morning Star stood tall before her teepee, presenting a composed figure despite being confronted by 4 mounted soldiers. Their blue uniforms were dusty from travel, their faces reddened by sun and wind. The leader, distinguished by his insignia, spoke with the clipped authority of a man accustomed to immediate compliance. "We're searching for survivors from attacked wagon trains," he announced without preliminary greeting. "Intelligence suggests 2 white girl children might be in this area." Morning Star's face revealed nothing as she responded in Lakota, gesturing. As if she didn't understand, the officer's frustration was evident. "Does anyone here speak English?" he demanded, his hand resting meaningfully on his holstered pistol. To the twins' surprise, Singing Bird appeared from the direction of the main village, her pace unhurried, her bearing regal. She positioned herself beside Morning Star before addressing the soldiers in careful, accented English. "I speak little English," she said, deliberately understating her fluency. "What do you want from Medicine Woman's camp?" the officer repeated, his query about white children, adding details that made the twins' hearts race. Twin girls, about 8 years old, blonde hair. Their wagon was found destroyed near Broken Tree Creek, parents dead, children missing, so the soldiers had found the site of the attack. The twins exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. If they revealed themselves now, they would likely be taken to the nearest fort or settlement, perhaps eventually sent east to distant relatives they barely knew. Yet remaining hidden carried its own dangers. If discovered later, their presence could be used as justification for violence against the Lakota who had protected them. Outside, Singing Bird translated the officer's questions for Morning Star, who shook her head and replied at length in Lakota. Singing Bird turned back to the soldiers. "Medicine Woman says no white children here, only her daughters and apprentice." She gestured toward the teepee. "Many Lakota children are sick with summer fever. Medicine Woman busy with healing." The officer's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "I'd like to see inside that teepee." Morning Star stepped forward, blocking his path. With unmistakable authority, she spoke directly to him, her words incomprehensible, but her meaning clear. This was her domain, a place of healing, and his presence was unwelcome. Singing Bird translated more diplomatically, "Medicine, space, sacred. Sick children need rest. Your presence bring bad spirits." The standoff might have escalated further if not for the timely arrival of Chief Running Elk, accompanied by several warriors, including Maka. The chief's presence changed the dynamic immediately. Unlike the women, he approached the mounted soldiers as an equal, his bearing conveying both dignity and strength. "Captain Wilson," he greeted the officer by name, revealing a previous acquaintance. "What brings bluecoats to a peaceful village?" The officer seemed slightly taken aback by the chief's direct address and knowledge of his identity. "Chief Running Elk. We're investigating reports of missing children from settler wagons." "Many sorrows on the prairie," the chief replied with diplomatic ambiguity. "Lakota also lose children, to sickness, to hunger when buffalo are driven away." The subtle reminder of the military's role in disrupting traditional Lakota food sources was not lost on the captain. "We're not here to discuss grievances," Captain Wilson replied stiffly. "Just answer plain. Have you seen 2 white girls, twins, in this territory?" Inside the teepee, Sarah made a sudden decision. Rising from her hiding place, she whispered urgently to Emma, "We need to show ourselves." "What? Why?" Emma clutched her. Sister's arm in alarm. Morning Star told us to stay hidden. If they find us later, it will be worse, Sarah reasoned. They'll think the Lakota stole us or lied to them. But if we go with them— I didn't say we should go, Sarah clarified. Just show we're here willingly, that we belong now. Emma hesitated, torn between trust in Morning Star's instructions and recognition of her twins' often sound judgment. Finally, she nodded, and together they emerged from the teepee, not rushing forward, but standing straight and calm in the morning. Light, their Lakota clothing and braided hair making a clear statement about their chosen allegiance. The sudden appearance of the twins caused an immediate reaction. Captain Wilson's hand moved to his pistol, while his men straightened in their saddles, alert for trouble. Morning Star turned to the girls, her expression unreadable to anyone who didn't know her well, but the twins could see the mixture of concern and resignation in her eyes. "My God," Captain Wilson breathed, staring at the blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls in Lakota dress. "You are the Thompson twins, aren't you? Emma and Sarah?" The girls remained silent, their eyes fixed on Morning Star, awaiting her guidance. The healer gave an almost imperceptible nod, releasing them from her earlier instruction to remain hidden and silent. Sarah spoke first, her voice clear and steady. "We were Emma and Sarah Thompson," she confirmed in English. "Our parents were killed by men pretending to be Indians. Morning Star found us dying from sun and thirst. She saved us." Emma stepped forward to stand beside her sister. "She's our mother now," she added with quiet determination. "We're her daughters." Captain Wilson's expression registered disbelief, then something like disgust. "Nonsense! You're white children, Christian children. Your parents would be horrified to hear you claim kinship with savages." "Our parents are dead," Sarah countered, her young voice taking on a hard edge. "Morning Star is alive. She feeds us, teaches us, protects us." "You've clearly been influenced by your captivity," the officer declared dismissively. "It's not uncommon. Once we get you back to civilization, you'll remember who you really are." He turned to his men. "Prepare to take the children. We leave immediately." Morning Star moved with unexpected swiftness, positioning herself between the twins and the soldiers. She spoke rapidly in Lakota, her hand raised in a gesture that required no translation. The children would not be taken without her consent. Chief Running Elk stepped forward, his calm authority a counterpoint to the rising tension. "These children were adopted by the Lakota way," he informed the captain. "Morning Star lost children to spotted fever. Great Spirit send new daughters to heal her heart. This balance in all things," Captain Wilson scoffed. "Adoption. They were abducted after their parents were murdered. Any adoption under such circumstances is meaningless under territorial law." "We weren't abducted," Emma objected, finding courage in her growing indignation. "We told you Morning Star saved us when we were dying." The captain's patience visibly thinned. "Children, you don't understand what's happened to you. It's a known fact that Indians attack wagons, kill settlers, and sometimes take children." He gestured toward their clothing and braided hair. "They've tried to turn you into something you're not, but you're white, Christian girls, and you belong with your own kind." His words struck at the heart of the identity crisis the twins had been navigating since their arrival in Morning Star's camp. They were white by birth, raised in Christian traditions, yet in less than a week they had begun to see themselves as part of this new community, embraced by Morning Star's maternal care and the tribe's cautious acceptance. Singing Bird sensed their inner turmoil and spoke quietly in Lakota to Morning Star. After a brief exchange, the healer nodded, her expression grave as Singing Bird addressed the captain again. "Children stay with us by choice," she stated firmly, "but they visit your camp, speak to you, show no captives here. Tomorrow they return to the village. This compromise Allowing the twins to demonstrate their free will while not surrendering them entirely was clearly not what Captain Wilson had expected. He frowned, considering the proposal with obvious suspicion. "And if they choose to leave with us once away from your influence?" he challenged. "Then they go," Chief Running Elk declared, surprising everyone present. "Lakota do not hold unwilling hearts. Spirit must choose its path freely." The captain studied the chief's face, searching for deception and finding none. Finally, he nodded curtly. "They came to our camp today. I'll speak with them alone, without your people present. Tomorrow I'll make my determination about their status." The arrangement struck the twins as both opportunity and test. They would have the chance to explain their situation fully to the soldiers, potentially easing tensions between the military and the Lakota. Yet they would also face intense pressure to renounce their new family and return to white society. Morning Star understood these implications as well. She knelt before the twins, adjusting their clothing and speaking softly in a mixture of Lakota and English. "Strong hearts needed now," she told them. "Speak the truth, remember teachings. I wait for your return." She touched each girl's buffalo horn necklace, a tangible reminder of their connection to her and the tribe. As the soldiers prepared to escort the twins to their camp, Zitkalar appeared with a small parfleche containing food and medicinal herbs. She handed it to Sarah with whispered instructions in Lakota, her expression communicating what her limited English could not: caution, courage, return. The ride to the soldiers' camp was conducted in tense silence. Emma and Sarah rode double, on a horse led by one of the younger soldiers, while Captain Wilson and the others maintained a vigilant perimeter, as if expecting an ambush at any moment. The military encampment, when they reached it, proved larger than the twins had anticipated. Nearly 20 soldiers, along with several civilian scouts, had established a temporary base by the creek. Tents stood in ordered rows. Horses were corralled in a makeshift pen, and cooking fires burned beneath pots of bubbling stew. The arrival of the twins created an immediate sensation. Soldiers paused in their duties to stare at the spectacle of two blonde, blue-eyed girls in Lakota dress, their skin sunburned but unmistakably white, their manner a disconcerting blend of settler and native influence. Captain Wilson led them to his tent, the largest in the camp, where a makeshift desk had been set up with maps and papers. A younger officer sat taking notes on the captain's dictation, but was dismissed as the twins entered. "Sit," Wilson instructed, gesturing to two folding stools. "Are you hungry? Thirsty? Have the Indians been feeding you properly?" The deliberate use of Indians rather than Lakota, and the implied neglect in his question revealed his prejudice clearly. The twins exchanged glances before Sarah answered carefully. "Morning Star has taken good care of us. We have enough food and clean water. She's teaching us how to find plants that heal and which berries are safe to eat." The captain frowned at this positive report. "I see they've already influenced your thinking. Let me be clear. Whatever comfortable feelings you may have developed toward your captors, it doesn't change the fact that you're Christian children who belong in civilization. Our parents taught us that God is everywhere," Emma said quietly, "even on the prairie with the Lakota." Wilson sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration. "Look, I understand you've been through a terrible ordeal. Finding your parents killed, being taken by Indians. "We weren't taken," Sarah interrupted firmly. "Our wagon was attacked by white men, deserters or criminals. They wore pieces of uniform but weren't real soldiers. They pretended to be Indians, so they wouldn't be blamed." This assertion clearly surprised the captain. "White men? That's absurd. Why would white men attack settler wagons?" "For whatever they could steal," Emma explained, recalling the raiders picking through their families' possessions. They took Papa's watch and Mama's silver hairbrush. They killed the oxen so there would be no witnesses. The detailed account gave Wilson pause. Children might be influenced to claim affection for their captors, but such specific descriptions of the attackers suggested they were indeed reporting what they had seen. "If what you're saying is true," he said slowly, "why didn't you try to reach a settlement or fort? Why stay with the Lakota?" "We were dying when Morning Star found us," Sarah repeated, growing frustrated that this central fact seemed to be continually overlooked. "We had no water, no food, no way to know where to go. We would have died on the prairie." "And now," Emma added softly, "she is teaching us how to survive, how to live in this place where our parents died." The captain studied them thoughtfully, his previous certainty visibly wavering. "But surely you understand you can't remain with them permanently. You have family back east, a proper Christian home waiting for you." This reference to distant relatives, great aunts and uncles they barely knew, struck the twins as hollow, compared to the immediate tangible care Morning Star had shown them. "What will happen to us if we go with you?" Sarah asked directly. Wilson shifted uncomfortably. "You'd be taken to Fort Laramie initially. There's a missionary's wife there who cares for similar cases. Eventually, arrangements would be made to transport you back to Pennsylvania. To people who don't know us," Emma noted, "who never met us." "To your own kind," the captain insisted, "where you can get proper schooling, proper upbringing. Surely you don't want to live as savages for the rest of your lives." His persistent use of the derogatory term ignited a spark of anger in Sarah. "The only savages we've met were the white men who killed our parents," she declared. "Morning Star and her people have shown us nothing but kindness." The captain fell silent, realizing he was making little progress. After a moment, he changed tactics. "You're confused now, and that's understandable. I'm going to have you stay in a separate tent tonight with Mrs. Holloway. She's our cook's wife. You'll have a good meal, clean clothes, time to remember what it's like to live as you were meant to." The twins recognized the strategy: separate them from Lakota influence, surround them with familiar settler comforts, and hope they're brief. Attachment to Morning Star would fade in comparison. It was not an unreasonable approach from the captain's perspective, but it underestimated the depth of connection they had formed with their adoptive mother. "We agreed to visit and talk," Sarah reminded him. "Tomorrow we return to Morning Star." "Of course," Captain Wilson agreed too readily. "I'm a man of my word, but I hope by morning you'll have come to your senses about where you truly belong." Mrs. Holloway proved to be a kind, if somewhat bewildered woman in her 40s, clearly uncomfortable with her assigned role, but determined to make the twins feel welcome. She had prepared a small tent with clean bedrolls and had spent the afternoon cooking what she considered a proper meal: salt pork, beans, biscuits, and canned peaches for dessert. Her eyes widened at the sight of the twins in their Lakota clothing, but to her credit, she made no immediate move to change their appearance. "You poor dears," she greeted them, ushering them into the tent. "What an ordeal you've been through. Come sit and have some real food. You must be starving for a proper meal." The twins accepted her hospitality politely, though they found the heavily salted pork less appealing than Morning Star's simply prepared but fresh foods. They answered Mrs. Holloway's well-intentioned questions with careful honesty, neither exaggerating nor diminishing their experiences with the Lakota. The cook's wife listened with increasing fascination, her preconceptions visibly shifting as the girls described Morning Star's healing skills, Zitkala's patient teaching, and Little Hawk's friendly overtures. "It sounds as though they've been decent to you in their way," she acknowledged, pouring them cups of sweet tea. "But surely you miss proper beds, proper clothes, reading your Bible." "We still have our Bible," Emma informed her. "Morning Star never tried to take it away. She respects that it's important to us." "And their beds are comfortable," Sarah added. Buffalo robes are warm, and the teepee keeps out rain better than canvas tents. Mrs. Holloway seemed perplexed by their lack of enthusiasm for returning to civilization. She had clearly expected traumatized children eager to escape captivity, not thoughtful girls who spoke of their Lakota caregivers with genuine affection. "The captain has brought some dresses that might fit you," she mentioned, gesturing to a small trunk in the corner of the tent. "Would you like to try them on? Might feel good to be in proper clothes again." The twins exchanged glances, silently conferring. This was clearly the beginning of the process to reintegrate them into white society. Refusing outright might create unnecessary conflict, but accepting too readily might be seen as rejection of their Lakota adoption. "Thank you," Sarah replied diplomatically, "but our clothes are clean and comfortable. Morning Star made them for us." Mrs. Holloway's disappointment was evident, but she didn't press the issue. As evening fell, she lit a lantern in the tent and suggested the girls might want to rest after their eventful day. "I'll be just outside if you need anything," she assured them. "The captain wants to speak with you again in the morning after breakfast." When she had gone, the twins huddled together on one bedroll, speaking in whispered Lakota, as they had been increasingly doing at Morning Star's camp. "They won't let us go back easily," Emma observed, her grasp of the language still halting but improving. "The captain has decided we belong with white people." Sarah nodded, absently touching the buffalo horn pendant around her neck. "Morning Star is expecting us. Chief Running Elk promised we could return, but what if they break that promise?" Emma's fear was not unreasonable. They had already witnessed how easily agreements could be violated when dealing with native peoples. "Then we find our own way back," Sarah declared with sudden determination. "Remember what Zitkala put in the parfleche. Not just food, but Morning Star's special herbs that help you stay awake, stay strong for long journeys." She was preparing us just in case. The realization that their Lakota family had anticipated possible treachery and provided for it strengthened the twins' resolve. Whatever pressure Captain Wilson applied in the morning, they would remain steadfast in their choice to return to Morning Star. Outside the tent, night settled over the military camp. Sentries patrolled the perimeter, watching for threats from the surrounding prairie. Inside their canvas shelter, two young girls, who had already lost one family, clung to their determination not to lose another. Emma finally voiced the question that had been growing in both their minds throughout the day's events. "If Morning Star is our mother now, does that make us Lakota in truth, not just in name?" Sarah considered this profound query with the seriousness it deserved. "I think," she said slowly, "that we are becoming something new. Not exactly white anymore, not fully Lakota yet, but Morning Star sees us as we are and loves us anyway." It was perhaps the wisest observation either girl had made in their young lives, an acknowledgement that identity was not simply a matter of birth or appearance, but a complex tapestry woven from experience, choice, and belonging. As they drifted toward sleep, lulled by the familiar night sounds of the prairie that penetrated even the canvas walls of the military tent, the twins held fast to this emerging truth. Whatever Captain Wilson might believe about where they belonged, their hearts had already found their home with a Lakota healer who had claimed them as daughters of her spirit, if not her blood. Dawn at the military camp arrived with military precision, a bugle's call shattering the quiet, followed by the immediate bustle of men emerging from tents, gathering equipment, and beginning their assigned duties. The twins woke instantly, the unfamiliar sound jolting them from sleep more effectively than Morning Star's gentle touch. Emma sat up first, momentarily disoriented by canvas walls instead of hide ones, by the harsh, barked orders outside instead of the melodic Lakota morning prayers. "They're already up," she whispered to Sarah. We should prepare ourselves." Sarah nodded, reaching instinctively for the parfleche Zitkala had given them. They had kept it close throughout the night, aware of its dual purpose as both sustenance and potential escape aid. Inside, wrapped in a clean cloth, they found dried buffalo meat, wasna, pemmican, and several small pouches of herbs labeled in Lakota, Morning Star's meticulous organization extending even to this emergency provision. "We should eat some wasna now," Sarah decided, breaking off pieces of the concentrated mixture of dried meat, berries, and fat. For strength. They ate quickly, listening to the activity outside intensify. A soft scratch at the tent flap announced Mrs. Holloway, carrying a basin of warm water and clean towels. "Good morning, dears," she greeted them with forced cheerfulness. "I've brought water for washing. The captain would like to see you in an hour. I've got breakfast cooking, real flapjacks with molasses." She hesitated, noting they had already been eating. "Though I see you've started without me." "It's our food from home," Emma explained, deliberately using the word home to refer to Morning Star's camp. "We didn't want to waste it." Mrs. Holloway's expression flickered with disappointment, but she placed the basin on a small folding table and turned to the trunk of clothing she had mentioned the previous evening. "I really think you should consider changing before you meet with the captain again," she suggested, producing 2 simple cotton dresses in faded blue. "These would fit you nicely, and they're proper for young Christian girls." The twins exchanged glances, communicating silently in the way that had always been natural to them, but had intensified during their days with the Lakota, where observation and non-verbal understanding were highly valued. "Thank you for your kindness," Sarah replied diplomatically, "but we promised Morning Star we would honor her gifts." She touched her deerskin dress, then the buffalo horn pendant at her neck. Mrs. Holloway sighed, clearly conflicted between her assignment to reacclimate the girls to white customs and her growing recognition of their genuine attachment to their Lakota caregiver. "At least wash your faces and brush your hair," she compromised, setting a small hairbrush beside the basin. "The captain is expecting you to look presentable." After she left, the twins complied with this reasonable request, washing away the dust of yesterday's ride and carefully rebraiding each other's hair in the style Zitkala had taught them, simple but distinctively Lakota, with the ends secured by thin strips of hide decorated with tiny seed beads. "Ready?" Sarah asked when they had finished these preparations. Emma nodded, her expression solemn beyond her years. "Ready to go home." Outside, the camp had settled into its morning routine. Soldiers cleaned weapons, tended horses, and gathered around cooking fires where breakfast was being served in tin plates. Many paused to stare at the twins as Mrs. Holloway escorted them toward the captain's tent, their Lakota appearance drawing a mixture of curiosity, pity, and, in some cases, undisguised contempt. Captain Wilson was not alone when they entered. A civilian sat beside him at the makeshift desk, a thin man with spectacles and a black coat that marked him as someone of official or perhaps religious capacity. "Ah, the Thompson girls," Wilson greeted them, his tone suggesting he had already reached conclusions about their situation regardless of what they might say. "This is Reverend Simmons from Fort Laramie. He's ridden through the night to assist with your case." The Reverend studied them with intense interest, his gaze lingering on their Lakota clothing and braided hair. "My dear children," he began in the practiced tones of a man accustomed to delivering sermons, "Captain Wilson has told me of your extraordinary ordeal, how the Lord must have been watching over you to preserve you through such trials." The twins remained silent, instinctively, wary of this new authority figure whose presence complicated their plan to return to Morning Star. "The Reverend and his wife run the missionary school at Fort Laramie," Captain Wilson explained. "They've helped several children in similar circumstances readjust to civilized life. The implication was clear. Other white children had been rescued from native influence and placed under the Reverend's guidance to erase whatever cultural contamination had occurred. "We have a comfortable room prepared for you at the mission," Reverend Simmons continued. "Mrs. Simmons is especially skilled at helping young ladies like yourselves recover from the confusion of captivity." Sarah stepped forward slightly, naturally, assuming the role of spokesperson for both sisters. "There has been a misunderstanding," she stated firmly. "We were not captured. We were saved from death by Morning Star, who has adopted us as her daughters. We promise to return to her today." The Reverend and Captain exchanged knowing glances that made the twins' hearts sink. This was a conversation these men had clearly had many times before, with a predetermined conclusion. "Child, it's not uncommon for young captives to develop confused loyalties," Reverend Simmons explained condescendingly. "The heathens are clever in their manipulation of innocent minds, but with proper guidance and prayer, these false attachments will fade." "Morning Star isn't manipulating us," Emma objected, her usual reserve giving way to indignation. "She teaches us to respect all living things, to give thanks for what we receive, to help those in need. How is that heathen?" Captain Wilson cleared his throat uncomfortably. "The fact remains that you are white children, orphaned by tragedy. The territory has clear protocols for such cases. You'll be placed under proper guardianship until arrangements can be made with your relatives in Pennsylvania." "What about Chief Running Elk's promise that we could choose?" Sarah challenged. "You agreed to that condition yesterday." "A diplomatic courtesy," the captain dismissed. "No civilized court would recognize an adoption conducted by savages, especially under such dubious circumstances. For all we know, the Lakota themselves may have been involved in the attack on your wagon." This accusation, which contradicted the twins' own testimony about their attackers, revealed the futility of further argument. Captain Wilson had made his decision before the conversation even began. "Prepare to depart within the hour," he instructed, turning to consult his maps. "Reverend Simmons will escort you to Fort Laramie, where you'll remain until transport east can be arranged." "And if we refuse?" Sarah asked, her young voice steady despite the fear churning inside her. Captain Wilson looked up, genuine surprise, crossing his features at this challenge to his authority. "Refuse, child, this isn't a negotiation. This is a rescue operation, sanctioned by territorial government." "You can't rescue people who don't want to be rescued," Emma said quietly. The Reverend stepped forward, clearly accustomed to managing difficult cases. Now. This resistance is perfectly normal at first. You'll soon see we have only your best interests at heart. Mrs. Holloway will help you prepare for the journey." With that, he gestured toward the tent flap where the cook's wife waited, to escort them back to their temporary quarters. The twins had no choice but to follow her, though their minds raced with desperate calculations. The camp was fully alert now, soldiers watching their every move. Even if they could somehow slip away, they would be easily tracked and recaptured. Their only hope lay in reaching Fort Laramie, where perhaps they might find someone willing to listen, someone who might understand that their place was now with Morning Star. Back in their tent, Mrs. Holloway tried once more to persuade them to change into the cotton dresses, but they remained resolute, clinging to this small act of defiance, as a symbol of their commitment to their adoptive mother. "Girls," Mrs. Holloway finally said, lowering her voice to ensure they wouldn't be overheard, "I can see you're genuinely attached to this Indian woman." "Lakota," Sarah corrected automatically. "Her name is Morning Star." "Yes, Morning Star," Mrs. Holloway amended. "I believe you when you say she's been kind to you, but you must understand, the men who make these decisions have already determined your future. Fighting will only make things harder for you." Her sincere concern touched the twins, who recognized an ally, albeit a limited one, in this gentle woman. "Will you take a message to her?" Emma asked suddenly. "To Morning Star? Tell her what's happened, that we didn't choose to leave." Mrs. Holloway's expression clouded with conflict. Such an act would be seen as undermining the captain's authority, perhaps even aiding the enemy. Yet the genuine distress in the children's faces moved her maternal heart. "I can't promise," she hedged. "But if an opportunity arises, what would you have me say?" Sarah answered in Lakota first, the flowing syllables coming more naturally now after days of immersion, then translated, "Tell her we keep her in our hearts, that we will find a way back to her, no matter how long it takes." Mrs. Holloway nodded, committing the message to memory, though her expression suggested she considered their hope of reunion futile. Outside, preparations for departure accelerated. The twins could hear horses being saddled, supplies being loaded. Their fate seemed to be rushing toward them with unstoppable momentum. Emma reached for Sarah's hand, squeezing it in their lifelong gesture of connection. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. Before Sarah could respond, shouts erupted outside, urgent calls, the sudden thunder of hoofbeats, orders barked in quick succession. The twins rushed to the tent opening, peering out to see soldiers grabbing weapons, mounting horses in haste. Lakota riders approaching from the west, someone called. At least 20 warriors. Captain Wilson emerged from his tent, telescope in hand, scanning the horizon where a cloud of dust marked the approaching riders. "Battle formations," he ordered. "Reverend, get the children into the supply wagon and prepare to depart immediately." The camp transformed into organized chaos. As soldiers took defensive positions, rifles ready, the twins exchanged glances of mingled hope and fear. Were the Lakota coming for them? Had Morning Star somehow convinced the tribe to risk confrontation with the military? Reverend Simmons appeared at their tent, his previous paternal manner replaced by urgent authority. "Come quickly," he directed. "We must leave before hostilities commence." The twins had no choice but to follow as he hurried them toward a covered wagon at the eastern edge of the camp, already hitched to 4 horses with a soldier at the reins. Mrs. Holloway stood nearby, wringing her hands in distress as the sounds of the approaching riders grew louder. "God be with you, children," she called Reverend Simmons, all but lifted them into the wagon. "Remember your Christian upbringing." The Reverend climbed up beside them, signaling the driver to depart. The wagon lurched forward, beginning to roll away from the camp toward the east, away from the approaching Lakota, away from Morning Star, away from the new life the twins had just begun to embrace. Sarah craned her neck, trying to glimpse the riders through the canvas opening at the rear of the wagon. What she saw made her gasp. "It's Chief Running Elk," she exclaimed. "And Maka, and—" Her voice caught. "Morning Star is with them." Emma scrambled to look, her heart leaping at the confirmation that their adoptive mother had indeed come for them. But the wagon was picking up speed, the distance between them and the confrontation growing with each moment. "We have to jump," Sarah decided, her mind racing ahead to calculate their chances. "When we reach that stand of cottonwoods up ahead, the wagon will slow for the creek crossing." Emma nodded, understanding instantly. They had learned quickly, in their time with the Lakota, that opportunity once recognized must be seized without hesitation. Reverend Simmons, focused on the commotion behind them, had momentarily forgotten to watch his charges closely. The twins gathered their courage, waiting for the precise moment when the wagon would slow to navigate the shallow creek. At the first lurch of deceleration, they moved as one, diving from the rear opening of the wagon, hitting the ground hard, but rolling as Zitkala had taught them when demonstrating how to fall without injury. The impact knocked the breath from their lungs, but they recovered quickly, scrambling into the underbrush before Reverend Simmons realized what had happened. "The children! Stop the wagon!" The Reverend's panicked shout carried to them as they pushed deeper into the creekside thicket, fighting through tangled branches, their Lakota moccasins allowing them to move more quietly than leather shoes would. Behind them, the wagon had halted. They could hear the Reverend and driver crashing through the brush, calling their names with increasing frustration. But the twins had learned well from Little Hawk's tracking games, how to move without leaving obvious signs, how to use the land itself as concealment. They worked their way upstream, keeping to the water when possible to hide their tracks, putting distance between themselves and their pursuers. Only when the sounds of searching had faded did they pause, crouching behind a fallen log to catch their breath and assess their situation. "We need to circle back toward the camp," Sarah determined. "That's where Morning Star is." Emma nodded, though her expression reflected their shared concern. They would be returning to what might now be open conflict between the soldiers and Lakota. Guided by the sun's position and their growing understanding of reading the land, they made their way cautiously back toward the military camp. As they drew nearer, they expected to hear gunfire, shouted orders, the sounds of battle. Instead, a strange quiet had settled over the prairie. From the cover of a small rise, they observed an unexpected scene. The Lakota riders and soldiers faced each other in two lines, not in combat, but in tense negotiation. Chief Running Elk and Captain Wilson stood in the space between, engaged in what appeared to be deliberate, measured conversation. Morning Star sat straight and proud on her pony, slightly behind the chief, her eyes constantly scanning, searching. The twins realized for them. "We need to show ourselves," Emma whispered, "before something goes wrong." Sarah nodded, and together they emerged from their hiding place, walking steadily across the open ground toward the gathered groups. Their appearance caused an immediate reaction. Soldiers turning, rifles half raised, Lakota warriors leaning forward on their ponies. "Emma! Sarah!" Morning Star's voice cut through the tension, and without waiting for permission, she urged her pony forward, riding directly to the twins. Captain Wilson called out an order, but it was ignored as the healer dismounted in a fluid motion and knelt before the girls, her hands moving quickly over them, checking for injuries with a healer's practiced eye. "You are hurt?" she asked. In Lakota, her usual composure fractured by evident concern. "We jumped from the wagon," Sarah explained, also in Lakota. "But we're not badly hurt." "They were taking us away," Emma added, "to Fort Laramie." Morning Star's expression hardened as she rose to her feet, positioning herself between the twins and Captain Wilson, who was now approaching with controlled fury visible in every line of his body. "Those children were in official custody," stated coldly. "Their escape is a serious matter." Chief Running Elk moved to join them, his dignified presence creating a natural focal point for the confrontation. "I told you yesterday," he reminded the captain. "Children must choose freely. You broke word, tried to take it by force. This is not honorable." "Honor is not at issue here," Wilson countered. "Territorial law is clear regarding orphaned white children. We choose to stay with Morning Star," Sarah declared firmly, stepping out from behind the healer to face the captain directly. "The law should respect our choice." Wilson's frustration was evident as he struggled to maintain control of a situation, rapidly slipping beyond his authority. "Children cannot make such decisions for themselves. It's our duty to act in their best interest." "And who decides what is best?" Morning Star spoke in English for the first time in the captain's presence, surprising him with her command of the language. "Men who know nothing of their hearts, or those who have held them through nightmares of their parents' death." This direct challenge from a Lakota woman, one he had assumed could not understand his words, momentarily threw the captain off balance. In the momentary silence, an unexpected voice entered the confrontation. "Captain Wilson." Reverend Simmons approached, disheveled from his pursuit through the creekside brush, but maintaining his clerical dignity. I believe we must consider another perspective. All eyes turned to the Reverend, whose unexpected intervention created a brief hiatus in the escalating tension. During my ministry, I have witnessed many tragic cases of children torn from their families, he began. Usually, it is Indian children taken to be civilized against their will and their parents' wishes. He adjusted his spectacles, visibly uncomfortable with the admission. While I have participated in such programs with the belief I was serving God's will, I have come to question whether separating children from loving caretakers, regardless of race, truly serves any divine purpose. This philosophical concession from such an unexpected source created a ripple of reaction among both soldiers and Lakota. Are you suggesting we simply leave white Christian children with savages? Captain Wilson demanded incredulously. I am suggesting, the Reverend replied carefully, that these particular children have formed a genuine bond with this Lakota woman. Forcing their separation would cause additional trauma to already traumatized young souls. He looked directly at the twins. I witnessed their distress at being taken from her. It was not the relief of captives being freed, but the anguish of children being torn from a parent. Morningstar's expression remained stoic, though something in her eyes softened at this unexpected advocacy. The military has no authority to override territorial law, Captain Wilson insisted, though with less conviction. Actually, Reverend Simmons countered, there is precedent for recognized adoption across cultural boundaries, particularly in cases where no blood relatives are immediately present to assume guardianship. His scholarly knowledge of territorial legal matters surprised everyone present. If the Lakota Tribal Council has formally recognized this adoption according to their customs, there is legal foundation for temporary guardianship until the matter can be properly adjudicated. Chief Running Elk seized this opening. Lakota, Council has spoken. These children are Morningstar's daughters now. When white law wants to talk more, we talk. Until then, they stay with their mother. The standoff had reached its critical point. Captain Wilson looked from the determined faces of the twins to the unified front presented by the Lakota leaders, clearly calculating the potential consequences of various actions. A military confrontation over two children would be difficult to justify to his superiors, especially with the Reverend now advocating for consideration of Lakota adoption rights. A temporary arrangement, he finally conceded with obvious reluctance, pending proper legal review, and I will be filing a full report recommending immediate intervention by territorial authorities. It was not a complete victory, but it was enough. The twins moved closer to Morningstar, their relief palpable as her hands came to rest protectively on their shoulders. We will return to our village now, Chief Running Elk declared, recognizing the wisdom of a swift departure while the fragile agreement held. As the Lakota prepared to leave, Reverend Simmons approached the twins one last time. From his coat pocket, he withdrew a small leather-bound volume. A New Testament, he explained, offering it to them. To accompany your Bible. Whatever path lies ahead for you, the Lord's words can provide guidance. The gesture, simple but meaningful, acknowledged both their Christian upbringing and their new life path. Sarah accepted the book with appropriate solemnity. Thank you, she said. Morningstar teaches us that wisdom can come from many sources. The Reverend nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. Perhaps there is more wisdom in that philosophy than in many of our certainties. With that, he stepped back, allowing them to mount Morningstar's pony. As the Lakota contingent rode westward, the twins securely situated with their adoptive mother, Emma leaned forward to ask the question uppermost in her mind. How did you know to come for us? Morningstar's response was simple, but revealed volumes about the community they had joined. Little Hawk followed wagon tracks. Zitkalar had vision of soldiers taking you east. Entire village prepared for journey to find you. She glanced back at the mounted warriors who had willingly risked confrontation with armed soldiers. Lakota do not abandon their children. The profound truth of this statement settled around the twins like a protective mantle. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and they harbored no illusions that Captain Wilson would simply forget about them, they faced them not as orphaned victims, but as daughters of Morning Star, members of a community willing to stand against formidable odds to keep them where they belonged. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.